Hello, delicious people, and welcome to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. Today, I am joined by the one and only Clayton Shiu. He is both a Kung Fu and Tai Chi master. As if that wasn't good enough, he went ahead and became a Chinese medicine doctor and studied with some of the top doctors in China. Today, we're going to be talking about air pollution, because this is a topic which will be affecting all of us, whether you live in the rural countryside or the cities. This is a problem which will only be getting worse in our future. So it's essential that we learn to use plant-based medicines to combat this growing affliction to humanity, because air pollution affects not just our airways, but even our hormones and our immune systems. So this will affect every aspect of our health. Even aspects such as how well we can deal with physical and emotional stress can be really compromised by air pollution. So thank you so much for joining us, Clayton.
Hi, thanks for inviting me, Andrew. It's great to be on this podcast.
So first of all, both you and I have, we've grown up doing Qigong and have spent time living in rather polluted cities. Can you tell us, first of all, what was it like moving to cities with high air pollution, and what were the effects that you felt physically?
So, actually, I grew up in a very rural, green, woody area in Pennsylvania. So when I eventually moved to New York City, I definitely can remember a similar feeling I had as when I went to China, but that was just going to New York City. You know, and you start taking the trains, and there's a lot more cars. It's concentrated. There's less trees, and so you start to feel like your lungs aren't quite breathing as much, and your skin feels a little bit, like a little bit like not dusty, but not as like glowing as you would like.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's funny is when you live in the city and the polluted cities like we've been to, you try to maintain this lifestyle, so you start working out, right? But the problem is when you start working out, you start breathing at a higher rate the polluted air and the water and stuff like that. So fortunately, what got me through New York was studying Chinese medicine further, getting into herbal medicine more and more, as much as practicing Kung Fu, Tai Chi, Shaolin, all that stuff. So eventually, when I moved to China to do my doctorate work studying stroke rehabilitation, at that time, this was about 2013 to about roughly 2016 and a half. And what happened was China had now reached this point where stroke was the number one cause of death over cancer, heart disease, diabetes. But the thing that you'll notice is that the air, the quality of the water, actually in China was probably the worst I've ever seen, where you could see and meet children that were 11 years old, and they would think that if you told them the sky was blue, they would laugh at you and think you're crazy. And they'll just point up at the sky and say, well, the sky is yellow. Just look up. So you have children that have no concept that the sky should be blue. And so while you're living in these areas, especially if you're in Beijing, Tianjin, Chengdu, right? You have more and more cars, and they're releasing more and more gas and transmissions. And so it affects your body more and more. So when we were living in China, you had to take your car keys, your ID card, and your wallet, and also like your pollution mask. So that was like your requirements. You can't leave the house without it because you don't know when like a pollution storm will come through. So the joke among my fellow classmates and I were, the foreign classmates was, we're living and we're studying in post-apocalypto environments right now.
Yeah, it's totally dystopian.
So, yeah, I mean, so there's definitely that factor. I got so paranoid where I started to basically order equipment that could test water, and I wanted to start testing the water that I'm drinking, the water that I'm showering with, the water that I wash my hands with. And I started noticing that there was just extreme high pollutants and measurements of lead and sulfur and stuff like that inside the water. And so as I researched it more, I noticed what you'll find is that you can get pollution from the water and the air, but if you shower for longer than 15 minutes, your skin starts to absorb the pollutants out of the water that you're showering in. So I would start bringing in all these filters, order it on Amazon.com, bring like a ton of filters, share it among my friends, and we would start replacing all these shower heads in the dorms, and teaching them what a Brita water filter does, stuff like that. So, and the pollution it's a serious matter. When I returned from China to come to New York, it was like I was detoxing in the Manhattan air. So if you know me well, I always joke around like that, but it was true. And every time when I went from America to China, I always took a full panel of blood tests, basically. So I found that within the year, the first year I went to China, I found that I started getting higher doses of mercury, lead in my blood. And then eventually I got arsenic poisoning, basically. So, and those are things that are, they're still like, in some ways, they're still gray areas because if you ask any 5 good doctors that you may know, they may give you a different answer because they may not think that even the heavy metal poisoning you can get from fish and tuna and from water, and chicken and even rice, they may not think that that's actually a problem. But interesting enough, if you go to like a reproductive doctor, right? Someone who's helping, like we have a lot of patients that want to have babies, right? Well, if you ask them to check the man and the woman, if you talk to the reproductive doctor and ask about pollution and heavy metals, they'll tell you, well, it'll definitely affect the genitals and your reproduction chances. So it depends which doctors you talk to, So I found that if you really wanted to know, you can go to your regular general practitioner and you can ask for a heavy metal test. You can ask for vitamin D tests. You can ask for, you want to ask it directly because they have it. They just won't offer it, basically. So, yeah, and that can work to your advantage. I must have had 4 thermometers worth of mercury in my blood by the second, third year, and at that point, I became even more of a born again herbalist and started talking to my friends in Beijing and Chengdu and they would say, well, we have this sample of sheng fuzhe, which is fresh fuzhe, right? And sheng fuzhe means also that it hasn't been cleaned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's radix aconite for the non-Chinese speakers.
Yes. So aconite is a very famous herb, particularly because sometimes it's on the you can't eat this list or you can't ingest this list in America, and sometimes it's not. The reason why is usually, and even in mainland Chinese medicine hospitals and herbal shops, they'll say, well, you're kind of limited to six grams of this herb in your formula, right? So by the time I was basically getting hypertensive signs, not breathing well, was feeling very, flustered being in the environment, my friends and I were like, okay, let's explore fuzhe more, So we got sheng fuzhe, but we found areas, especially down in Sichuan and Chengdu, where when they prescribe fuzhe, they'll prescribe sheng fuzhe, but they'll use 20, 40, 50 grams, okay?
Yeah, I've seen 60,
and that's
yeah.
Right, 60. And, they could use 60 grams easily on a frail old woman, but she has a herniated disc, and you'll see that actually the herniated disc will get treated, and the
It'll
person
slip back
will
into
actually
place.
recover.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it just increases the repair of those tissues, right? So if you think about it, what we were exposed to in America, and partially it was because of our safety, but we weren't getting the full effect of some of these herbs because we weren't getting the correct dosage. So by the time I became a born again herbalist, and my lips were purple. I didn't feel great. I took fudza. I started with 40 grams, and it was kind of funny. We all made like shot glasses. We boiled it, So what you have to do is you have to prepare it. I wouldn't just, if you're listening to this podcast, I wouldn't just get shung fudza. First of all, you have to, get it from people that can reliably farm it and crop it correctly. And also, you want to make sure that it's not been cleaned with any of the type of agents that they use to clean it, because actually the agents that they use to clean to technically take the poison out of fudza is actually the poison that gets stuck in fudza.
Mm-hmm.
So fudza is very toxic by the time it comes to the U.S. or to the Western country, because the chemical they use is more toxic than fudza itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a big problem. Then when you get your shung fudza, what I had to learn was how to start preparing it. So, you have to put it on a low boil for at least an hour. And that actually starts getting rid of all the poison or chemical agents that would be too strong for your body. So after that, it's amazing because as we know in our Chinese medicine world, aconite, fudza, it's very warming. It's great for your bones, your bone marrow. It makes your kidney and liver extremely strong. So when we started taking fudza, we noticed our energy started coming back, our fatigue started to drain out, and we noticed that even the color of our lips and our complexion started to change.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of funny. If I had friends over, we would, instead of getting a beer or a couple beers and Qingdao out, we'd be like, hey, let's have some fudza. Okay, let's have, it's like a fudza party, you bring the shishin, you bring the the mahuang, I got the fudza, and let's go get some fresh dates and get going. So, yeah. So things like that, and also getting really good high quality like guajar, right? So, because guajar, as we know, it's also great for the blood, and it can
So these are cinnamon twigs.
So, right. Sorry. Yes, cinnamon twigs. So, and just like with cinnamon, with parts of the plant, I liken Chinese herbal medicine to watching like an episode of Chopped, on TV. Like, you get this basket of 3 things that don't make sense, and the chef has to like figure out what to do with it. But the chef that usually wins the show is the one that's familiar with this long plant, but knows that this root tastes like this leaf does this, and this stem does this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with cinnamon, we have the branch of cinnamon, which are the twigs. Then you have the bark of cinnamon, which is even super spicy and hotter, right? So, and often that's used with fudza to even like have an even stronger healing effect on the body, especially if it's very weak.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of ingredients like aconite and cinnamon and those kind of things, they actually help promote the life and spark of the person's body, which helps sparks the immune system, helps sparks the kidney, helps sparks the liver, and actually helps sparks the heart too, right? Because we liken cinnamon as a spicy type of herb, okay? And in a recent study, I read this a couple years back, we use herbs like aconite, fudza, and rogué. We use it to treat the heart, okay? And one reason why we do that is because in Chinese medicine, we'll say that spicy flavor is the spiciness that the heart likes, because spicy can be like spicy bitter too, right? So in a recent study, they found that the most spice receptors in the whole body, okay, the most concentrated part of your body is the heart, okay? And what's really amazing is that fudza, aconite, or cinnamon, when you give it, or danshan, right, those kind of herbs, they have that spicy nature. They can take a heart that's contracting really hard and make it relax. And it's because of those spicy receptors that are actually concentrated on the heart. And this was like like an Ivy League study that was basically saying that, which is saying why we start categorizing food and flavor,
Mm-hmm.
Very naturally in Chinese medicine, right? The five spices.
Right.
Everyone's
They're
had some
finding
kind of
these
five-spice chicken.
taste receptors all throughout the internal organs too, like salty. Right. I think they found that even in the genitals and kidney, there are more salty receptors. So it really, says a lot about the herbal affinity when spicy is supposed to be turning to yang. And it makes sense with, if you look at studies on Fuzi, aconite, and hemodynamics and the effects on renal filtration, it makes a lot of sense. And what you were saying about the spark, one of the concepts, of course, we have in Chinese medicine and Qigong is the Mingmen, or gate of life. This is kind of the spark that fires up the whole body. And that's right on the adrenal plexus, and it seems to have direct effects on ACTH.
Wow, yeah. So that's the beauty of how when we combine modern science now with the old ancient knowledge, right, of the Chinese medicine and different medicines. It could be American medicine, right? It could be many things. So, but so yeah, I just love how it kind of justifies and maps out why we choose certain like really pure high grade ingredients versus like, we don't want to use like 1 ton of like a not so good quality ingredient, whereas it's just a complete waste of money and stuff too. So especially if your life, depended on it. So,
yeah, as it does. Yeah. So besides, I used the mask and I was taking herbs in order to adjust from these side effects. And one of the things I noticed was being outside of the main cities versus going into the main cities, the level of oxygen available was just lower and I would feel tired. And if I did exercise and I was doing Qigong or Tai Chi, instead of feeling revitalized, I would just kind of feel sluggish again. And so I really had to control the timing. If I woke up really early, there's less traffic at night, there's more chance for wind to blow through. I could get that revitalized feeling if I was sweating and working out in the early morning. And then, so the time of day for exercise, it became not just like a theoretical thing like, in the classics of, Qigong or Tai Chi, they talk about waking up early. But it became a necessity because just, otherwise you're choking on dust.
It's totally, and there's a lot of, now there's a lot of even further legitimate research, just like with those receptors, that justifies why specific times of the day is when you want to exercise or not want to exercise. When I came back from China, I remember having like metallic taste in my mouth that only started after a couple of weeks after I got back. And when I was in China, just like you, when I tried to exercise, I noticed my heart rate. I was starting getting it like tachycardia, because I'm trying to exercise. I'm doing stronger movements, more intensity, but my body can't get enough oxygen. So the body's response is for the heart rate to increase, right? You can't get enough oxygen. I'll pump faster to get more blood for your body, right? And get that blood oxygenated. But it doesn't work if like the pollution index in New York is about 75 and in Phuket it's about 3, and then in Chengdu and Beijing and Tianjin it's about 600, So, I mean, there's literally alerts that would say, do not go outside today. It's not safe. If you're going to exercise, you should exercise inside. When I came back to America, even my close colleagues that are medical doctors, they were still on the fence, not really believing what we were sensing just from our training. We know what normal training should feel like. And then you try it in those environments, you're like, why am I getting weaker instead of stronger, right? So Columbia University, I was listening to just randomly, as I was a little discouraged from talking to colleagues, but randomly on NPR, they did a study, they did a feature about Columbia University. And what they were doing was basically saying that on high rush hour times of the day, right? Like in the evening and during lunchtime, They took 150 bike messengers, cyclists who drop off mail, right? And they made these little homemade MacGyver backpacks, okay, and gave them oxygen masks. And they were measuring how much pollution these bicyclists were bringing in as they were biking at certain times of the day. So, and so what they found was that basically in the Columbia study, they found that the cyclist was breathing in 2.5 times more pollution during the commuter hours than when it wasn't during that the busy rush hour times. So that really proves how, yeah, you have to pay attention to what time of day you want to work out, what type of workout you want to do. And this is like a really big open field, I think, because basically the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we have an agency, but I think almost every EPA system or branch of government in the world is probably the weakest branch in the whole government. They don't have any funding. They don't have much, much that they can use to leverage to make you, create a safer footprint and safer environment. So they haven't even set the limits of pollution yet, which should be standard, across the world. So, and in China, there's there's cars that they don't even put the filter in the transmissions of the car anyway. You can see documentaries about that. So and that's because there's no strength there in that committee or in that part of the government. But as acupuncturists and herbalists, and any kind of natural medicine type doctor, we actually have a lot in our toolbox. We have fudza, we have cinnamon. Just by needling Li4, you can start having the lungs open up and breathe better. We've done that on a daily basis for everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and macrophages are just so crucial for that, because that's what's going to help to eat away a lot of the antigens and pollutants that are there, particularly the heavy metals. But the tragic thing is that heavy metals interfere with our macrophages. They kill them. So it's like this, you just have to overpower it. And one of the concepts is whenever we're doing something that's qi boosting, or if we're taking something like ginseng or astragalus, huang qi, it's increasing the macrophages, as is doing qigong. So at a certain point, in order to detox, we need to first of all stop getting active toxicity, and then have a period where our qi is just kind of on full blast in order to clean this stuff out. And we have to make sure our microcirculation's on point, because without that, this stuff just gets in and sediments and kills you slowly over time.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and in a perfect world, we usually can break down these heavy metals, but in this kind of environment, everywhere, we're not able to do it efficiently. So it's almost like how people say you should eat organic foods and stuff. You really should get basically organic or wild-crafted herbs, because they're going to have a stronger effect and have those effects on the white blood cell counts, and the platelet counts, and like neuropathy and things like that. So it's pretty interesting that things are coming full circle, and yeah. I mean, even like if you watch, this is indirectly related, but if you watch the documentary Chasing Coral, right? So, and I think that's on Netflix, but Chasing Coral just showed that, okay, if the temperature of the water changes 3 degrees, right, then all the coral in that area start to die immediately. So, we have all these environmental changes that are happening around the world, right? But we're also continuing to produce more and more and more and more pollutants, So we got the heavy metals, we got lead, mercury, arsenic, and other pollutants that just affect like your ear, your eyes, your taste, right? So ultimately, I think what actually happens, what I've seen, is that these pollutants make your heart work even harder, right? And sometimes, in many cases, that induces a hypertensive effect, and that hypertensive effect actually will potentially create a stroke event for that person. Now, it could be like a transient ischemic attack, or it could be an all-out full stroke event, you know. So, and it's kind of funny because to go to China and to study how to treat stroke, I actually felt like I was putting my own health at risk, because I was slowly starting to feel the symptoms of hypertension go higher, stronger. You know, I would come back and people would say, "Wow, your face looks rusty or red or purple," you know, and it's because I couldn't breathe. You know, I wasn't getting enough circulation and oxygen. So, you know, and I think my blood results for vitamin D, because of the pollution in the air, was almost like down to 2, basically. So, and that kind of thing, even the longer you stay there, it affects your testosterone. It really affects everything. So testosterone, vitamin D, all those things.
Yeah, the
those
hypothalamus as well. I remember not being able to warm up in winter. Like before, you know, I would have my body heat, and even I would get walking, you know, and then break a sweat, but then I couldn't warm up after that. And that was just my kidneys were shutting down from the air pollution.
Wow. Yeah. So
the ACTH was already on its way down and out.
Yeah.
So besides the mask and herbs, one of the things that I found is there are plants which can help act as filters in the house. And of course, we also have to think that plants can carry mold of their own. But outside our apartment in Chengdu, there's kind of this, I would say balcony, but it's like a metal cage that goes outside. And I would pack that thing with spider plants and then wash them once a week, because spider plants can help to clean a lot of environmental pollutants. And what I would do is, it was like, you know, maybe 2 feet of just thick spider plants that I figured they was acting as a set of lungs, because this is the air that was coming into the house. Then right by the window, I would have additional plants that were kind of various plants. I don't know how to say them in English because I bought them at a plant store in China, but
right.
you know, just various, a variety of plants that have been known to detoxify. And I could feel an immediate difference within 24 or 48 hours. And then the other thing was, we went to a hyperbaric oxygen tank. And this was actually after getting carbon monoxide poisoning. We went there, but we felt so amazing afterwards. And I've seen studies on that helping with improving macrophages and cleaning away heavy metal toxicity. I just thought, well, why not? The downside with those, the real ones that when they explode will take away a city block if you ignite anything. Right. They're kind of like submarines, you know, they're just big and pressurized.
Yeah.
So we would do that every so often in order to, you know, detoxify.
They have these new portable hyperbaric tanks now, but they look more like these long tube-like sleeping bags, and you can set it up in your apartment or house, and then you kind of zip yourself in and like turn it on and stuff.
Yeah, so, no claustrophobia.
Yeah. But I think that's a good point. It's definitely anything that can help reset the partial pressure of oxygen in your blood has a huge effect countering the pollution, or just helping your body feel more efficient is the key there. So, and it's kind of, I mean, it's interesting, like, you know, they're like in China, when you go into the higher altitude places, you know, they'll sell you these oxygen tank gas and stuff like that you just breathe in and stuff, or there's oxygen bars in certain parts of Beijing just to breathe better, you know. But there's a lot of truth to it too. It's kind of sad. So actually eating stuff like ginger when you get into the higher altitudes actually helps too.
But again, for the spicy.
Right, the spicy components. So definitely, like, the lung and heart keep responding to the spice flavors.
Do you want the spicy and bitters to clean you out?
Right. And I think it's important to emphasize that they're very regulative too, meaning like your body will adjust to how much it needs to reset itself. You know, so it's hard to say that you would have like an excessive amount of astragalus or, you know what I mean, or cinnamon, because I think your body will especially when it's deficient, it'll take how much it needs and then excrete the rest out,
The
So,
pharmacology shows that as
yeah.
well. That you think that it's not working the way that a Western medication will, where you get to a certain dose and then it'll just
Yeah.
kill you. What they find is that when you get to more extreme doses, it actually becomes more safe in a way,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's hitting the regulatory centers and it's working on the cellular receptor sites, and then once it's kind of done, it's just not responding anymore, which I think
Yeah.
is really fascinating regarding plant-based medicines versus other pharmaceutical interventions.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, is also that like Chinese herbal medicine and acupuncture, what it really has the strongest effect is the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems of the body. Not just like, okay, yes, it can treat back pain and shoulder pain, but just the fact that it can help with irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, asthma. Those are all organ issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somehow, for some reason, just having a needle in, your body resets itself from that. And also, when you have the right herb in, the right herbal combination, because it works synergistically, also helps to reset the body so it functions better. So yeah, like the other day, my mom even was trying to tell me her new chicken foot recipe.
Uh-huh.
And she's trying to tell me, okay, go get a bucket of chicken feet
Mm-hmm.
in Chinatown, and son, I didn't let you needle me because I was trying this chicken foot recipe, and when I tried it,
All
I
right,
could
not
walk
fair.
better.
This is actually making my mouth water right now. I love chicken
Yeah,
feet.
right. So she's telling me all these ingredients like da zhao,
Mm-hmm.
wager, shenjang, like ginger,
Mm-hmm.
cinnamon, everything like we're talking about.
Yeah.
She's practically saying, just get a slow cooker,
Mm-hmm.
cook it up, drink it, and all your leg pain and foot pain will disappear. So, and it worked because she wouldn't let me needle her. It was so
Right.
funny. She just
Well, it's, where are you going to get that kind of collagen all at once? I mean, people,
Yeah.
if you look at, like I had these bulletproof, the company Bulletproof bars, like they're like chocolate bars and they're filled with collagen. Well, so are chicken feet. You boil down chicken feet with the spicy
Right.
stuff. The Chinese moms are walking GNCs and they'll do it for like
Yeah.
$1.20.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and and it's kind of funny because in Chinese herbal medicine will also use like different insects, right? Right, like cicada and like the Sanpao Shao, like some of those, like the praying mantis case and stuff like that. But that may not catch fire from this podcast. However, there are bars now called cricket bars, right? And they'll take the chitin and the protein from crickets and grasshoppers, and they made protein bars out of it because they found that your body can absorb more efficiently from the insect's protein than even chicken or beef.
Well, it makes
So they
sense. We're
literally
apes,
made
right?
little,
So look at apes are
yeah,
always popping bugs in their mouth.
right.
That's that's our
That's
history. It
right.
makes sense.
Yeah, I want
Awesome.
that silverback physique,
That's how you get it. I used to carry every herbal formula I could get my hands on. You can just imagine how this clogged up shelf space and mental space. Plus, it gave me a lot to dust every week. We looked at our most effective products, our automatic top sellers, and found that they coincided with the most popular and effective herbal products in East Asia. We decided to focus on the winners and then make them even better. Our research team in Chengdu upgraded these formulas using the highest quality herbs on the planet and rigorously testing them at pharmaceutical standard for quality and safety. You'll want to get your hands on this, and you'll get your supplies at botanicalbiohacking.com. Thanks for listening to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Miles.